Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. If you have any questions, let's see, we do have one question from David. This will be recorded and will be available on the webinar page, the Cosmo Campfire page on the website. If you've registered for the webinar, you'll also get an email with the recording as well. So today we'll be discussing the resource forecasting tool. This is a new feature and it's pretty in-depth, so we want to make sure that you get all of the details on and how to set up and use this feature. So today we do have a special guest on the call. We have Colin, who is the CEO and co-founder of Aprica, and he will be going ahead and giving us some detail on the resource forecasting tool today.
Thanks, Lexi. Hey, everyone. So as Lexi said, we'll be covering off all of the resource forecasting functionality. So really, what we're going to look at is there's a number of parts to that resource forecasting. First of all, we're going to take a look at the role availability. So looking at how you can specify, how many hours per week, or adjusting someone's billable target and so on. Then we'll take a look at role forecasts, which can be put in at either the opportunity or the project level. We'll also look at the hours distributor, which was a previous feature that was available with certain limitations, and we've expanded that as part of this resource forecasting functionality. And then ultimately taking a look at what all of those things come together to provide is greater insight into the resource planner. So as Lexi mentioned, obviously any questions, feel free to put them through on the chat. If I can while we're going along, I'll answer them. Otherwise, we'll get to them at the end. So main objectives obviously is really to get a bit of a deeper understanding on how role forecasts, actions, and holidays all come together to really drive the actual forecast of expected demand of individual resources. So we're going to take a deeper look into role availability and how you can manage that and set different periods of time as to when someone's going to be available. We're going to take a look at the role forecasts create. So really just putting in a soft booking. So we might not necessarily want to go to the extent of building out a full detailed project plan, but we have an opportunity. It's at a certain probability percentage that we think it's going to come off. So we want to give the services team early insight into the fact that we're going to have a need for these resources. And looking at how we can manually distribute the hours for actions and holidays. So but by default, the hours scheduled to an action or a holiday would just be divided evenly between the working days. But the hours distributor allows you to go in and manually adjust that based on when you think that effort is going to be expended. And then, as I say, we'll dive into the resource planner. Okay, so just before we jump in and start taking a look around, really just wanted to talk through looking at all of the key objects within Mission Control that form the data model that feed the resource forecasting. So obviously we start with the role record. So the role is a record for an individual person, or it might be a placeholder. So we might not necessarily know which developer is going to do the work. So we have a placeholder developer that we can assign that upcoming work to. As I mentioned, underneath the role, we've got the role availability. So that allows us to actually say that this person from this date to this date, they're going to be available X number of hours per day, or their billable target might be 50%, but after that period of time, they're working the same hours, but their billable target would change. So then where can we get our demand from? So it's ultimately going to come from the opportunity and the project. So ideally, the project would be committed work. So this is stuff that we have already sold, we need to deliver. Anything related to the opportunity is more of a forecast. So what are we going to be, what do we actually think we're going to be selling that's going to then need to be delivered? So you can actually have role forecasts that relate to an opportunity or a project. And I'll talk about a bit more about that as we go through. So the role forecasts, as I say, they consider those the soft bookings. So these are just real high level, like high level reservations of time against individual resources. The detail of what we are going to deliver still sits at within the project plan. So the milestones, actions, and contributors. So that's the committed work that we need to do. So the other area that can cause a demand for time from resources, obviously holidays. People taking PTO, public holidays coming up, and so on. So a combination of all of those, so holidays, role forecasts, action owners, and contributors, all come together to provide role allocations. So what you would have is, if you are creating a role forecast underneath an opportunity, let's say for 10 working days, you would end up getting 10 individual role allocation records underneath that role forecast. So those role allocations indicate how many of the hours from that role forecast have been allocated to that person to a particular day. Likewise on from the actions, from the contributors, and from the holidays. So your role allocations could cover holidays, role forecasts, and actions, and that would be where you'd get that centralized view of all of the work that has been allocated to that resource. So then, obviously, as we are going through and logging our time against our actions on our projects, we want to make sure we're tracking that as well. So we've also got the role actual object. So the role actual, again, centralizes the data from time logs and from holidays into one reportable object. So previously, before that object, we would be using the role utilization page that exists in Mission Control, and that would pull together the data from these objects. But you were never really able to create your own custom reports. So by bringing in this role actual object, what it does is really just takes a copy of the time log record, takes a copy of the holiday record, and creates those. So basically, how many hours per day for this time log or for this holiday did we actually deliver? So using that role actual object, you'll actually be able to run standard Salesforce reports to look at utilization across each individual person. Okay, so we're going to jump in now and take a look at all of those key features, let's jump in now. Okay, so I'm going to start with role availability. So I guess it depends on how granular you want to go with it, really. So on the role record, I can specify how many hours per week this person is working. I can specify what percentage of that time should be considered billable. I can also come down and say how many hours per day of the week that this person is going to be working. So obviously you can see here, I'm working 8 hours a day, Monday to Friday. I don't work Saturday and Sunday. However, obviously you might have periods where you need to vary how many hours they're working or what percentage that would be. So I'm just going to jump over onto Steph's record. So you can see at the moment she's working 40 hours per week, but her billable target is only 25%. So scenario here is Steph's a new member of the team. We, so while we're ramping her up, we're training her how to do the job. We're not necessarily expecting her to hit that full billable target of 80%, say. So whilst she's still doing 40 hours a week, we've given her a lower billable target, but we only give her 3 months to get ramped up, and then we want to move her on to that other target. So rather than us having to remember to come in and change that after a 3-month period, we can use this we can use this manage availability page that will allow us to create role availability records. So you'll see here at the moment, so let's say Steph started with the company on the 1st of March. We're giving her a 3-month ramp up period. So specifying how many hours per day she's working, but I've been able to reduce her billable target during this ramp up period. So this is currently active. So I've also created another record for the period beyond the ramp up period. So once we kick into June, still working 8 hours a day, but I'm moving her billable target to 80%. So this is obviously going to give us the ability to report more historically around, so going back onto like the role utilization page, these role availability records will be taken into account. So even when we change her from 25% to 80%, looking historically back to those times when she was meant to be on 25%, it wouldn't be getting reported inaccurately. And I don't have to, I'll cover this off towards the end, but I don't have to come back and manually change this. There's an automated process that you can schedule on the console, and that will automatically change that, toggle these over so this one becomes active. So other scenarios might be that you could, other scenarios might be that you can actually, maybe someone's going part-time for a period of time, for a period of time, or they've come from part-time to full-time. Just got a quick question from Becky. She's saying, would you skip entering the end date for the availability in this instance if Stephanie was going to be continuing at 80% indefinitely? It's a great question, Becky. At the moment, you do need to specify an end date. However, we have already identified that's likely to be a requirement, so we will be looking at adding that in as an enhancement going forward, to where, as you say, like there's, you know, if she's inevitably going to be continuing at this point, I could just leave that end date empty. In terms of would you use, I had another question there, would you use this for someone going on paternity leave, maternity leave? Yeah, you could. I mean, theoretically, you could also actually just mark them as inactive. But yes, you could create a role availability with just zero hours and 0 billable target for that period of time. Okay, so moving on, what we're going to take a look at is our role forecast component. So scenario here is I'm working with a prospect, scoping out delivering an implementation of Salesforce for them. So it's getting to a point in the sales process where I'm feeling pretty confident that it is going to happen. So I want to start giving the services team early insight into the fact that this might be coming down the pipeline, and it's going to be work that they're going to need to deliver. So you'll see we've got this related object of role forecasts. So obviously I'm not going to go through and create each one individually through the standard UI, but we do have this manage forecast component. So if I open that up, so this lets me go off and select people. So I can select a person's role, or I can first of all select a skill, and that would actually filter down. So if I click in here at the moment, that's shown me everyone that I have a role record for. If I go in and say, actually, I'm looking for someone that knows how to do Apex, so what that would do is actually filter that down and only show me the people that are capable of doing that. So I'm going to add Chris on here. I'm going to say, so what I'm doing over on the left is I'm adding a new role forecast for somebody, and that will populate it over on this side. So in terms of specifying the effort, I can either put in the hours or a percentage of their time. So for Chris, I'm going to say I'm expected to need 150 billable hours and probably 20 non-billable. That's looking to start on Monday next week, and I'm going to need him for 30 working days. So click on add. That goes off, creates the forecast record. It's pulling back information from his role, or also checking his role availability as well. So it's looking obviously how many hours per week, how many days per week, what the billable target is. So in this instance, I've set the hours. I'll do an example in a moment where we're looking at percentage, and this all becomes a bit more relevant. It's also pulling in so it's obviously worked out. I set the start date, but based on the number of working days and his availability, taking into account holidays, it's worked out the end date based on the number of days. So it's also pulled in his role rates as well. So for this particular skill, he gets charged out at this rate and he gets paid this rate. So what that's giving us insight into is how much revenue we would be generating from his effort, what cost we would be incurring, and what margin we might be making as well. So you could be using this to scope out the overall effort for that opportunity to determine what should be going into the quote to the customer. Okay, so I'm going to also add myself here, and I'm going to say I actually need 50% of my billable availability and 25% of my non-billable. So just use the same 30 days. So in this example, it's gone off and added me in, and it's looking at my 50%. It's working out how many hours per week I work over the period of time that we've requested. So it's calculating, obviously. So 50%. Oh, so sorry. I'm asking for 50% of my billable target, which is 80% of 40. So my billable target, 80% of 40 is 32. I'm asking for 50% of that. So I'm basically asking for 16 hours a week over this 30-day period. So it's automatically calculated how many billable and non-billable hours should be allocated to me. Again, pulling in end dates, rates, and so on. So what I've got there is obviously two separate role forecasts, but there's 30 days of effort for each of us. So in the background, what's also happening is the role allocation records are being created. So that effort that has been put to us from those role forecasts is actually being distributed across all of the days here. So these individual, so this is one role allocation record. This is another role allocation record. So I'm going to leave them all. Evenly distributed, but I could come through and manually distribute. So just click on save. So that's gone off and it's created the role forecasts. And if I was to drill into one of those, we would also have all of the role allocation records sitting underneath that. So we'll just take a quick look there. You'll see individual role allocation records for each day for me for the amount of hours that have been assigned. So back up on that opportunity. You might, if you want to go in and adjust that, you can do that by just going straight back into the manage forecast component. So clicking onto the role allocation tab. Now you might not really want to do this at an individual day level. So what you can do is toggle that over to a week's view, and it's just going to show the hours per week. So you can extend that out if it's a longer action. So if I expand that, so I might say, look, I'm only going to be doing 10 hours this week, and I'm going to be doing 22 hours next week. So simple example, but what I'm doing there is just unevenly distributing the effort based on when I think that that work's going to need to be delivered. So that's obviously managing resource role forecasts relating to the opportunity. I can also do the same thing at the project level. There's two things you can do with a project, and I'm just going to jump over to one now. So with a project, you could have a role forecast, and you could also have your actions, which are your actual work that you're going to deliver. Obviously, both won't get counted, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Scenarios of why you might need both. So we have Have some customers, for example, that are running like agile projects. They know this project's going to be running for the next 12, 18 months, but they're only really building out detailed sprints for the next 3 or 4 sprints. So they might have let's say 6 to 8 weeks worth of actual work defined as milestones and actions on their project. So obviously, if you were to look at the resources that were working on that project, you would only really think that they're busy for the next 6 to 8 weeks, because there's no actions beyond that booking them out. But as I say, we know this is running for 18 months. So what you can do is use your role forecasts to just at a really high level, just book them out for this project. And that still allows you to keep building the detail of the sprints as and when you're working through them. So you can use the you've got from the project, you've got the ability to get in and manage a forecast, exactly the same as we've just taken a look at the opportunity. When it comes to actions, you're doing that via the hours distributor. So you can manage the distribution of effort across actions. You can do it at a project level, you can do it at a milestone level, you can do it at an individual action level. So if I was to jump into this milestone, you'll see that I've got my manage distribution button there, so I can open that up. So that's going to show me the effort across all of the actions relating to this milestone. Again, I could toggle over and show weeks. I could adjust the timeline and so on. And what I'm able to do is then drill into when is that work going to be delivered, and make adjustments again. So making an adjustment from a week perspective here. So if I was to adjust this, so let's say I take 4 from there and add it over here, what that does is it takes the 20 hours and divides it evenly amongst the working days that have been allocated to throughout that week. So for example, if I'm on PTO for 2 of those days, it's going to divide it by the 3. If I'm available for all 5, it's going to divide it by all 5. I can also do this at the individual action level as well. So if I was to drill into one individual action, I can also manage that distribution here as well. So choices of either doing it at an individual day level or at a weekly level. The other place that you can use the hours distributor is on holidays. So previously, if you had a holiday, you would. So in this example, sorry, Bethany is taking. She's on PTO from Friday through to Tuesday, and she's taking 2.5 days and 20 hours. So previously, what that would do is divide the 20 hours between the 3 working days. So you would be allocated 6.67 to each day. Realistically, in this scenario, what Bethany's doing is actually taking Friday afternoon off, and then she's taking Monday and Tuesday off as well. So using that, using the managed distribution functionality, you're able to go in and unevenly distribute that. So rather than them all being 6.67, I've been able to come in and indicate that there's 4 hours here and then 8 hours on each of these. Just got a quick question there on is there a time length on the hours distributor? Can we do, for example, 52 weeks? I believe, Lawrence, that you can. I think it would go out to about 100 weeks. The other thing that we are going to be adding in is a navigation element as well. So when you're if you were looking at let's say 12 weeks or 30 weeks, you might want to choose to go to 52, but you might want to be looking at a smaller period, and you would just be able to navigate, toggle between, let's say, one 12-week period and another 12-week period. No problem. Okay, so obviously what we've covered off is we've covered off role availability, looking at the individual roles, the role forecasts at the opportunity level or at the project level. We've looked at manually using the hours distributor to unevenly distribute the effort at an action level and at a holiday level. So obviously we've got all of those elements driving the role allocations. So that all comes together onto the resource planner. So resource planner has two tabs here, so overview and planner. We'll take a look on both now. What we're looking at is a chart that's providing us with a high level summary. So red line is the capacity of the team at that period, obviously taking into account role availability records. The blue is the committed work that has been allocated to actions. Orange is holidays, and then the grey is the forecast. So those forecasts may be related to opportunities, they may be related to projects. So you can choose here whether you're looking at what you're actually looking at. So you can choose to just look at forecasts, you can choose to look at just actions, or you can choose to look at both. Now, obviously, going back to that scenario where I had a project where I've got 6 weeks worth of actions and I've also got 18 months worth of role forecasts, I don't want to be double counting those. So you can choose that if a project has both forecasts and actions, I'm going to choose the forecast. If it has both, I'm going to choose the action instead. So you can obviously choose that. It's going to be a persistent setting for you. So I'm counting both forecasts and I'm counting actions. And where projects have both of those, I'm looking at the forecast, not the actions. So over on I'm looking at a specific date range. You can change that. Down here, I'm seeing each individual person. So during this period of time, what their capacity is, how many hours have been allocated to them, and what percentage of their capacity are we using up. So clearly, I've got some early indicators that I've given some people too much work to do, and I've got other people that aren't necessarily doing much there as well. But overall, I've definitely got enough people to deliver the work that I need to do. So obviously, really what this is, the benefit of this is that this will give you early indication of, like, do we have too much work to actually to deliver based on the resources we have, or vice versa. So certainly, we would certainly be concerned if the blue bar ever ended up over the red, because obviously that's indicating that we've got too much committed work for the resources that we've got. So we're clearly going to have to do something to address that. Obviously, the grey bar gives you an indication of your forecast. So thinking back to this could be potential opportunity work that hasn't yet closed. So it's not going to be as much of a concern as the blue bar, but if collectively they go over, it gives us an indication that we are likely to need additional resources if all of this work comes off. So that's obviously relating to projects or opportunities. What you can do is actually filter this down and say, obviously, we might decide as a business to say we're going to create role forecasts to scope out our effort to allow us to quote a customer. So we're going to have a role forecast on every opportunity, but we're not going to close every opportunity. So we might want to exclude some. So we could say, look, I only want to look at opportunities that are reaching a certain stage, or once they get over a certain percentage, I might actually be able to I might say only include stuff that's over 70%, for example. The other thing you can do on the overview page is just toggle between the role and master team. So rather than looking at each individual person, you can just toggle that by master team. So again, highlighting, I don't have any issues within any of my teams. I've probably just got issues with individual resources. So, for example, if I go into my consultants, you'll see, right, collectively, there's enough capacity amongst us. We just haven't done a great job at distributing it out. So I probably just need to go out and figure out, could I take some of Bethany's work and give it to Gabriel or Kelly, for example. Okay, so then on the planner, so I'm just going to pause and read this question. So we've got a question from Jody. In our business, project managers have to request work to be allocated to individuals via the resource manager. How would this be handled in MC? How do we prevent the project manager allocating work to an individual at the project level without approval? So ultimately, I guess what most people would be doing in that instance is not assigning it to actual people in the first instance, but assigning it to like placeholders. You'll see here that I've got work assigned to individual placeholders, placeholder resources. So then the resource manager could be looking at things like the resource planner and working out who needs to, who's going to be the best resource to do that. And then we would be able to go to the project. So if I just jump back onto a project quickly. Just going to jump onto one of my templates because I know I've got placeholders on there. So you'll see within each of these, I've just assigned a placeholder resource. So the resourcing manager could then obviously work out, okay, well, who's going to be the best consultant or the best developer to put onto this? So once they've done that, they can actually use this reassignment page to take that off. So what this allows you to do is a mass reassignment from within the project. So I can see all of my current people that are responsible for work on the project, and then I could use this as a mass reassignment. So for my trainer, I could say, right, Alana is going to be the trainer, and that would transfer anything that this placeholder owns is going to get transferred off to Alana. Okay, so what I did there was just toggle onto the planner tab. So I'm choosing currently to group it by roles, obviously each individual role record. I'm also able to choose to toggle that over and look at project or opportunity. So if I change that, that will just display, it will just display the data grouped by project or opportunity rather than individual person. So if I was to click into that, I would see the people that have been assigned to that, how much effort they've been assigned, whether it's billable, non-billable, that sort of stuff. So I'm just going to go back to the role. So we have the same display options in terms of like, do we just want to look at forecasts, actions, both, considering which one would win. So right now I'm looking at hours. So for each individual person, we can see, how many hours capacity, what hours have been allocated to them. Are they over their allocation? So I'm currently looking at week by week. I could choose to look at days, or I could choose to look at months and go out to a certain period of time. So if I expand one of these, so I get a breakdown of, so obviously the 380 hours, that's made up of, it's all made up of billable work. So if I take a look at someone else, you might see that they've got a blend of billable and non-billable work, and you can also see where that's coming from. So it's forecasts relating to these opportunities, it's work relating to these to these projects. So you can just drill in into these and just get a breakdown of whether it's billable or non-billable. So if you do need to make any changes, you could obviously just click out to there, go to the manage distribution component and adjust the distribution as required. So the other thing that you can do here is look at either the billable revenue or the cost that you would be incurring to deliver that work as well. Just a question there. So is the resource planner only showing action owners, not contributors? It's showing absolutely everyone, and whether they're the action owner or the contributor, their role allocation records will be taken into account. So in some instances, I might be the action owner, in others I might be the contributor, but my role allocations would be counted regardless of my role that I'm playing on that action. Okay. Final thing, really just to cover off, was the actually turning on the resource forecasting functionality. So from the control pad, you've got the ability to look at. So there's a section here for role allocation automation settings. So if you want your role allocation records to automatically be created. So for example, I've shown you today doing it manually, I created those role forecasts on the opportunity, and it also created the role allocations. But if I was to go off and create an action, I don't have to go into the hours distributor to create those records. I could just have them created, evenly distributed automatically. So by checking this box, that will allow that to happen. So that will automatically create the role allocations in the background. You can specify a frequency here. So obviously you can be, let's say I've just created an action for three years long. You could potentially run into a Salesforce governor limit there. So what that would, we've got a fail safe in there where it won't be automatically created by the trigger on the record, on the object, but it would be created by a batch process asynchronously. So in that instance, you can choose how frequent the batch process runs. So you can say, I want it run every minute, or I want to run 5, 10, 15 minutes. And you can also set the limit of how many days it might. So by default, it's set to 100. But you could, if you find that your projects are turning out to be a bit more complex and you're running into an issue with that, you could come here and reduce that number. So it reduces the load on the trigger, and it would push it out to the batch class instead. Auto generate role actuals again, so that when I'm creating a time log or when I'm creating a holiday, it will automatically create a role actual, a record in the role actual object for me as well. And then this one is going back to the role availability page, where we are, think back to Steph, where we had her on 25% billable target for the first 3 months. So what this is doing is at 10 o'clock every day, you can specify the time that you'd like that to run. At 10 o'clock every day, it's going to check to see if there are any role availability records that need adjusting. So obviously on the 1st of June, when Steph moves from her ramp up period to a full period, those records would be toggled being active. So then obviously for existing customers, you might, if you do want to start using this, you might want to historically generate data, your role allocations and actuals for existing actions, time logs, and holidays. So what you can do, so all of this would need to be turned on. And then you would also, so once that is done, you would then just activate this, set a date to when you want to go back to. And then what that would do is just in the background, it would generate the the role allocation and role actual records relating to actions, time logs, and holidays during that period of time. So hopefully that gives you a bit of insight into all of the resource forecasting functionality. What we're going to do is just open up to questions. I think I've managed to answer most questions along the way so far. So just while we're waiting to see if anyone does have any further questions, just to let you know, we have obviously a range of resources available on the website. So you can get in touch with support by either via that email address or by raising a support ticket on our website. Detailed user guide, training videos, obviously the searchable knowledge base. All of our release notes are documented on our website as well. Learning portal, and obviously we've got a chatter group on the Salesforce Trailhead community. We have had a question come in: where do you turn on field history tracking? So great question, Sharon. I'll just jump in and show you. I assume you're referring to, if you're looking at this tile and you haven't turned on field history tracking, you'll get a notification up here. So the objects that you do need to turn on are documented in the user documentation, but I guess there's two components to this. I'll show you on the contributor. So if I go to my contributor, can't type. So if I go to my contributor object. So first thing to check is that this is set to true. So if this is not true, you would just want to click edit here. and scroll down and just make sure track field history is turned on. Once that's done, you would then click onto fields and relationships, and then over on the right hand side you just click on the set history tracking field, and then you're just choosing which fields need to be tracked. So I think for resource forecasting, I think you need to have there's certain fields in the documentation for the role forecast, the action, and the contributor. But principle would be the same for all three objects. Is there some training material available on this? Yeah, absolutely. So obviously this session is going to be loaded onto the Campfire section of the website, but there's full documentation in the user guide and on the in the knowledge base. Okay, we'll hang on for another minute or two, see if there are any other questions, but just to obviously say thank you for your time. It's always great that everyone's so keen to get more insight into the various features. And on that note, we'll be back next month. So I think Lexi's focusing on expense management next month. And like always, if there's anything that you want to see in a particular Campfire in the future, by all means, feel free to get in touch and let us know what you'd like to see.
Thank you everyone for joining in.
Okay, looks like we're done with all questions. So thanks everyone for your time. Hope you have a great day.